Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Vince.
And today we're here to tell you how we felt about Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah!
And Vince, would you tell us a little bit about this movie for folks that might not have seen it yet?
Essentially, there's a guy in this movie named Max, and he's kind of
mad.
Yeah. So the movie starts with Mad Max, not actually being called Mad Max, being kind of on the run, and he's trying to figure out how to survive. And they make it very apparent that this movie is about survival.
Yeah.
And right from the first scene. And essentially, he's captured and then spends the rest of the movie trying to figure out a way to gain freedom and sustain survival. So all of this stuff, kind of one comes after the other. And along the way, he finds people that need assistance, and it all happens within the confines of a post-apocalyptic world where it seems to be people kind of worship cars and the essential pieces for survival, like water and food, they're all precious things. So,
yeah.
Yep. Without giving away too much, that's what it is.
And I think it's really interesting that in giving that synopsis, not to read your synopsis too much, but I think it's interesting that you jumped immediately to just taking this movie in what it is and not talking at all about the movies that preceded it. I feel like it stands pretty well on its own, and so I'm saying that as someone who has not seen the other movies. I'm in no way whatsoever qualified to review this movie.
I also think Road Warrior is a better movie. But
but forgetting quality of stories or whatever for a minute, I did not feel lost.
No,
I didn't have any problem sitting down and enjoying this movie without seeing anything before it, and I feel like it's designed that way.
I kind of feel like I think you're right,
which is part of the reason that I decided to go ahead and see it, even though I hadn't seen them yet, because I had planned on. Sorry, because that's Vince's screensaver. Because I had planned on, if I was going to see it, maybe going ahead and watching a couple of the others. I was kind of up in the air because this didn't seem like it was really my kind of thing, but then Vince wanted to see it, and I was like, and at first I was like, well, Vince, I haven't seen the others, and he was like, yeah, let's go, and I was like, okay, fine. So we went, and then I decided it might be an interesting experiment to get a review from a guy that's seen the others, and somebody that hadn't. So
I will admit that it's been a long time since I've seen them, but
so I don't know. In case you're thinking, well, Cap, you should have done the homework. That's why that happened. And I didn't have any problem with it getting through. I'm sure there are things that I would have appreciated a lot more had I seen the others.
It wasn't hard to follow, and that was the big thing.
Yeah, as we went along, there were some characters that you pointed out that you thought maybe were in some of the others. And
I think that guy is either in the other one or was supposed to be like the guy that was in the other one. So,
well, Vince, tell us how you felt about Mad Max Fury Road.
So this movie made me feel like a cross-eyed cat in a hurricane.
Always with the cryptic metaphors.
Yep. And that's not a bad thing.
What do you mean by that?
The plot was not confusing, but visually.
Vince, I feel like this is the board I would have given had we had to see it in 3D.
That's
just
fair.
Because of my thing. Vince was like, can we go and see it in 3D? I was like, no, Vince, we cannot go and see it in 3D. Because, you can go to a different theater if you want to, but if we do that, not only am I not going to be able to see the 3D effects, but I'm going to pay extra money for the screen to be darker and have to have a thing on my face for 2 hours. That's what me watching 3D is. So anyway, that's what my board would have been if we had done that.
Indeed.
Anyway, okay, so what do you mean by that?
So a cross-eyed cat in a hurricane,
hilarious.
because there is constant stuff on the screen. It is so full of stuff on screen. And there's stuff that's in the background, but for the most part what I mean is to me it feels a lot like a hurricane. There's just a bunch of crap flying around the screen. Cars flipping over, people flying through the air, literal crap in the air, flying around.
Yeah, once you get into sandstorms and stuff, that board is more literal, really.
And so the hurricane is inspired by that. But a cross-eyed cat. A cat because its reflexes, people are like surviving miraculously throughout this movie. And then cross-eyed because I'm having to try to focus on everything that's on the screen. And so that's what I mean. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that in a culture where interest wanes in the slow parts, people kind of, want a lot of stuff happening on screen. And the story is really pretty bare here. Not that it's bad, it's just not extremely present. It's more about the action. So that's why I say cross-eyed cat and hurricane, because you have to pay attention to see everything. But it's all happening very fast and right in your face.
It's like really overwhelming to the senses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Give me something that you really, really liked and something that you were on the fence or not sure about.
I ended up by the end of the movie really liking the Doof Warrior character, the completely pale white guy.
How cool was it to take one of those guys and make him one of the characters with the most dimension? None of these characters have a lot of dimension. There's kind of there's some reasons for that, but I mean, like, those guys are kind of the slaves of the being, or the guy that's making everybody think that he's a god. It's cool to take one of those. It's like if you took a putty from Power Rangers and made it a character.
And I think because this movie, and I think the reason I latched on,
it's not exactly like
that's
that.
funny. I think the reason I latched onto the Doof Warrior is because he's essentially the main character. He's the one who makes decisions. He's the one who, everybody kind of like comes to these decisions. I guess I'm going to go along with this thing that I don't want to do. But then the Doof Warrior is a guy who is being proactive, and even if what he's doing has some kind of logical fallacy in it or blind belief, he's still making choices and doing things. And that's what I find interesting about this guy. And he's changing throughout the movie. Everybody else remains static, and not in a bad way. It's intentional.
But not forever either. I mean, I think that I would argue that that all three of the major of the major principal characters have somewhat of a character arc. And I don't think any of them are not proactive, really. I mean, look, it's not Max's fault that he's stuck in one place for 25 minutes. Okay, it's not his fault.
I think calling this movie. That's funny. But I think calling this movie Mad Max is almost... it should be called Doof Warrior Fury Road.
Here's the thing, though, and I don't 100% agree with that, because I'm hearing a lot of people saying, isn't it interesting that the leader chick of the harem is kind of like some people are saying she's the main character. I think what we have are triple protagonists, and I think that that in a way both of them overshadow Max a bit.
Yeah, because and that's part of the problem when you.
And I can't decide if that's a bad thing or not.
I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I mean, the movie is.
It kind of just feels like it's called Mad Max because that's his world and he's there and he does have a character arc. But
I wish that they didn't have the book-ending voiceovers with Mad Max. Well, with Max.
I guess I forgot all about those.
Because they essentially serve no purpose other than to say, I'm dark and brooding. And I don't have the correct accent for this movie I'm in. And, it's like, whatever. And you know what? That's my biggest complaint, is that we have this book-ending thing that I feel like just serves to kind of ruin it. Oh. And the other thing, I guess...
it's magic?
The other thing...
Never
I get it.
It's not.
It took me a second. I was like, what's magic? The bookend thing?
Sometimes I gotta keep going with the joke until you finally... Okay, name this tune in 3. I'm sorry.
But there's really only a couple things that annoyed me about this movie. The rest of it was just a lot of action. The thing that annoyed me was that we didn't get more about Max's character in relation to his history, because we see a lot of this stuff about him having these hallucinations about people from the past that he didn't save, but then he seems completely uninterested in saving the people in the present. And what bothers me about that is it feels to me, it doesn't bother me that he's not saving the people in the present. What bothers me is that they focus so much on the fact, and they even state at the beginning of the movie, in the bookends, in the introduction with Mad Max, keep saying that, with Max, where he says, like, the people I couldn't save. You mean your family, because that's different. If the problem was that you cared about those people and not about people in general, then your choices in this movie make perfect sense. But he has a line at the beginning that maybe I just misheard it, maybe I misunderstood it, but it seemed to me, especially with the 3 preceding movies, where he ultimately decides that he's going to save people, that...
yeah, and that's why I don't have that background, so...
Having that thing at the beginning kind of drove me nuts, because then I'm like, he's not seeing his family, he's seeing the people he couldn't save. So, people is a problem. Family is not.
He just had a really big family, Vince.
he just keeps inducting people into his
every one of
family.
those people he was related to. He's General Martok from DS9. He just keeps inducting people into his family.
What's funny to me is that they show a black guy at the beginning, and I'm like, he's not related to him.
yeah. They're probably not related.
So, and you know what? If they just kept showing his wife and kid, great. Then
it would have been the Punisher.
But, well, fair enough. And at one point...
Some people want Tom Hardy to be the Punisher.
I would be okay with that.
I don't know if he can fake an American accent.
Well, that's fair.
He'd be a British Punisher.
He certainly isn't trying to fake an Australian accent.
Yeah.
So, and there's so many accents all over this movie, I could care less. But, so that's my biggest thing, is that they seem to make...
care less, because if you could, that means you could care at least a little.
What did I say?
You said...
That's right.
I'm just kidding.
So those are the thing I like the most is the Doof Warrior.
Look, I could care less if you say I could care less, Vince.
And, well, we can talk about it in a little bit. What do you have on your sign?
No. Go ahead and flip your...
Oh, okay.
Your
I thought we were going to do this at the end.
Oh, no, we did that right after.
Oh, okay.
Right after your thing.
I'm going to say,
that's the part where you do that.
Despite the fact that I think it is kind of limited in the depth of story, but it's expansive in action, which isn't necessarily always my thing. I will say I am feeling it. I think it's fun. I think it's worth going to see. It's definitely entertaining.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that's mostly what it's there to be. But that's not to say that there's not any interesting ideas in it.
No, there's super interesting ideas. It's just not necessarily in characterization. It's more about building of the world, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'll argue with you just a little bit about that in a second. This movie made me feel like I was watching an incredibly violent and intense heavy metal concert through the desert.
That is very accurate.
That's what it was, and that's what I loved about it. This was almost. I mean, it's not anything like the same thing, but in a way, at least, because I kept thinking about this. It was sort of like if Metallica through the Never had a real story. But anyway, so. One of my favorite things about this movie, and we're going to try not to give too many details away, but was the guy on the front of one of the biggest giant rig from the side with the king guy that everybody thought was a god, who kept playing this massive electric guitar. All of it, that was his only job. Mm-hmm. And it was absolutely hysterical. And that encapsulates, for me, what was so much fun about this movie was all this really bizarre, like 80s iconography.
Yeah, it really feels grindhousey too.
Yeah, I kept thinking grindhouse myself. And this kind of genre is not usually my bag. But I did have a really good time watching it. Like, this is not the kind of thing... Somebody like Vince would almost have to drag me to a thing like this before I would go and realize that I enjoyed it, you know what I mean? One of the things I was really surprised by, because, of course, people can be asking me how bloody is it, how gruesome is it, and there definitely is some stuff, and maybe we're getting more and more to a place where we're just getting so deep. I'm seeing so much stuff, I'm so desensitized now, that things didn't bother me that would have bothered me 10 years ago. However...
Well, everything's covered in sand. It's hard to see the blood.
That's true. But there were some places where just the idea of what a person was going to do or did or was about to do would kind of make you a little bit sick to your stomach, right? Or was supposed to do that. But I was surprised by the number of times that we had a build up for a really horrible, gruesome thing, and then a character wasn't able to do that for some reason, or the character ended up doing something else, or where we just saw it. Like, this movie has things that we don't see that are off screen. I was kind of surprised by that. It's careful not to go too far with that stuff. I felt like, in a way, you're right in that it is throw as much, crazy high octane. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. High octane action,
figuratively and literally.
But it felt kind of timeless to me, all at the same time. Like, it felt like it wasn't allowing our modern sensibilities to affect its pacing too much, or at least it did a good job of duping me into feeling like I wasn't watching a Mad Max movie that came out in 2015. It doesn't feel too much like a throwback either. You know what I mean? It's not. I mean, I guess inherently in premise, it kind of has to be a throwback because what we're doing is we're extrapolating from a period of time that's happened already. This is not an extrapolation from 2015. The odds of this future, well, the odds of this future happening, but the odds of this future from 2015 aren't likely because we've already moved past a lot of the kinds of obsessions that we had in, especially like really ultra masculine culture at the time that these movies were first made, the late 70s, early 80s, right? So, that you would have such a perversion of biker culture, not likely. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So obviously it's sort of like Star Trek, where it's like at a certain point we have to acknowledge that we are extrapolating from the 60s and not from the 90s. You know what I mean?
You have a point here, and I think this is kind of something that's maybe unfair to talk about since you haven't seen the movies, but...
Oh, no, go ahead.
This Fury Road is so much better at like the as you said, extrapolation into something bigger than what Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome was, because that movie was ridiculous and nonsense, and which. Whatever, I enjoyed it. It was basically like watching a version of Hook rated R, but it was really weird. Anyway,
Rufio!
Mad Max, man. So
It's not enough syllables, man.
do for and scene. So when you look at this movie, I think what makes it timeless here is that it does feel like we have a world where all of the essential pieces of life-giving or society-sustaining resources become precious or abused by the power, which, I mean, you know, that's true for all time, but now it's just more precious.
Yeah, and the ideas are still relevant, obviously, because even more than because time passed and stuff. Even more so than when the first Mad Max movie was made. We are even more and more worried about running out of resources and destroying our world and that kind of stuff. So, you know, the ideas still matter, and the not just degeneration of culture, but degeneration of humanity, the dilapidation of humanity, and that was ideal-wise, that was the thing that I really latched onto. When you say that the characters are maybe a little bit more thin than they have to be, I am so of two minds about that, because I feel like you could just say, okay, well, there's sort of a reason for it, but mostly we get to just because it makes sense, we then can just use it as an excuse for a whole lot of action. The nice thing is all the way through all the crazy car chase. I mean, it's one giant car chase. It's several car chases strung together. I always know where I am and well, it's one big desert, but I always know what's going on. I always know why we're there and what these people want, and it helps. So that simplicity helps me always understand where people are and stuff, but it doesn't feel like it's just a bunch of stuff being thrown at me. I get why the characters are doing what they're doing, but the reason I say that I'm kind of on the fence about it is because at the same time as I would love to know more about some of these characters, sometimes I wonder if there is any more to know about them. Where it's like, well, the whole point is that maybe these people have become more animals than they are people now, and you've got this degeneration to the point like we're seeing almost like a social de-evolution, where you have these people who. And now it's weird that it's only like one generation removed. I have a little bit of a hard time with that.
Yeah.
But the idea is you've got people that are so desperate that they've embraced superstitions like the deification of a leader. And I really latched onto that. That's really Egyptian, and I thought that was really cool. And so you've got that, and then you've got the kind of paralleling character arcs between Max and the lady that leads the harem.
Whose name completely escaped me.
I don't remember either.
I think her name was Charlize Theron.
It's not that important because
Furiosa.
You get their names in the closing credits, but I don't know that they're really said all that much through the film.
Furiosa. That's what it was. No, that's what it was.
Oh, is that what it was?
That's what it was.
All right, that's great. Anyway,
well, at least that's what they called her.
By the way, I'm jumping all over the place. The naming of some of those people when you get to the end, and maybe part of it's just the stylistic way that it's shown on screen, but reminded me a lot of not just Grindhouse, but also kind of like pulp comics.
Yeah.
And I guess I go to pulp comics a lot lately, but I feel like movies are going to pulp comics a lot right now.
I think it had a lot to do with the
lighting. There's a big
influence. And there's one scene in particular that made me have that thought too, which now that you say it, I am kind of torn between pulp and between Grindhouse, is because they like get this close up with the windswept hair.
But then isn't Grindhouse kind of influenced by pulp?
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
And like they have this eye lighting that it seems to be in every Grindhouse or pulp thing.
Yeah. And even noir stuff, there's a lot of that.
It just goes straight to the eyes, and then all of this stuff is dark. Even if it's really interesting, like a breathing mask that has giant teeth on it. You know, whatever. Let's say, for example, that could be what it is.
So anyway, the thing about the characters being too thin, I kind of feel like the more I think about it, they're not, and it kind of is in a way the perfect action movie because it makes sense that it's so action driven.
Yeah.
And so then I'm able to get behind that, and also it's just such a fun ride that I don't really mind it. It's smart enough that I don't feel like it's I don't feel like it's trying to trick me into thinking that it's a deeper thing than it is.
That's true.
But I mean, you get you get the paralleling character arcs. I know what I was going to say with Max and the lady of the harem. And they Furiosa, if that's actually her name, where both of them are kind of learning to appreciate people again, and it's this survival versus this self-survival versus having some humanity and some decency, and how in the world could you have any decency in a world like this that's run by that guy, and all of that, and that was the stuff that I latched onto the most and made me actually care about people.
And I mean, you have Furiosa, who has basically decided that she's going to care about people.
Wingardium Furiosa.
And then you have Max, who has basically decided that he's not going to care about anybody.
Yeah.
And then you have the Doof Warrior, who is following his deity ruler and is kind of worshiping a valiant death as being the most important thing. So now we have other people's lives, my life, no life. I mean, it's about it. And then you see this guy, the most significant change comes in the Doof Warrior, and that's why I say it's basically his movie. But then Max and Furiosa, I basically watch them go from where they are to where I expect them to be, rather than where they are to a unique idea of change.
Okay. I mean, I suppose that's fair.
And you know what?
But what else would it be? I mean, I guess
to some extent, I celebrate movies that can do that, where I feel very satisfied. Like I felt Dread was very satisfying.
Even though it's kind of where you would have expected it to go.
Yeah. But I mean, he makes a decision at the end of it that doesn't have to. That is inspired by the rest of it. That is inspired by the rest of the movie. And in this one, Max makes a decision almost out of necessity rather than change of character, where now he is protecting people that are essentially protecting him. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You're saying that it needed to be more of a self-sacrifice kind of thing.
Yeah, it needed. I mean, and that's the thing, is that if you just took if you would have just had a little more dialogue. Now, I do appreciate that it's so visual. I get that, but that's the thing, is that this movie, if you took out a lot of the action, you don't lose many plot points, because the action is about essentially them on the road. If they keep going, that's where the action comes from.
Yeah.
And the fact is that they're trying to escape the entire movie.
But it's also a pilgrimage movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's we're trying to get to the Holy Land, and so you want to see all the obstacles that these people have to overcome in trying to get to their Garden of Eden place. Mm-hmm. So yes, you're right as that there's not a lot of heavy plotting that goes on through that, but the point is the journey. So
I will say that by the time we get to the Holy Land, we'll call it that, so we don't give too much away.
Yeah.
By the time we get to the Holy Land, about 5 minutes prior to that, I'm starting to look at my watch, going, man, there's just a lot of crap on screen.
Oh, really?
And then we start getting some more interesting character stuff, rather than
was
people pointing guns at each other saying, I don't trust you.
I don't know, man. The aesthetic is so unique.
Yeah.
And what I'm looking at is so thrilling, and it's shot in a way that's not too shaky cam and hard to look at. Yeah. That I'm still enjoying myself. So I guess I'm kind of surprised that I feel like you're criticizing it more than I am, which is interesting, because this is so much more your kind of movie than mine.
And another thing that I don't quite understand is, if water has become such a precious commodity and food has become such a precious commodity, then how do we have so much gasoline? I mean,
yeah, because I thought the whole idea was that what created this dilapidated culture in the first place was more the lack of oil than anything.
That's what I thought too. I mean, maybe I was wrong, and that's what I told Cap.
Yeah,
so,
well, that's what you told me before the movie started. That's all I knew about it. But they do seem to I don't know. I thought the whole reason that they worshipped, automobiles and stuff so much was because of how rare and precious that was. So you had to be in the elite of that culture to even be able to drive cars.
Yeah.
And then they had different factions that had them. So there's other factions that have them, and there's not really an elite kind of thing. But you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. But I guess the only real answer to that, Vince, is it's a movie where we're going to be driving for 2 hours, so we've got to have gasoline to make that happen. But
it's kind of like those video games that you play and you never run out of bullets. Like,
yeah,
wow,
well, and they
that's
don't run out of
bullets.
those either, so that's...
Yeah. Which, I mean, a lot of the... you know what's funny is that they even address that in there. The only
They
people
do,
that
yeah.
seem to run out of bullets are the people that we're following in the movie. The bad guys never seem to run out of bullets.
One thing I do really appreciate on the side of the bad guys, first of all, I think that what little we understand of him, that the godlike ruler guy is really interesting, and like I kind of feel bad for him in a couple places, and he's not humanized because he's sort of the personification of the lack of humanity in this culture, and but in another way, he's Max also just going a different direction, right? Where he's found another way for him to survive at the expense of other people.
Yeah.
And so like he's just done that in a different way, and it's living off the backs of people rather than running and running and running, and occasionally there's someone that needs your help, and you just keep running because you have this self-preservation thing and you don't want to get killed. So it's all about the varying degrees that people will put themselves above other people, because if they don't, they're afraid that they'll get killed.
What's so cool about this world is that we have the big bad who essentially creates a world where there are certain people who are subjugated. You have the serfs. And then you have the warriors and the people he is breeding to be his warriors. And what we essentially have is a group of elite. We have a ruling class, we have a warrior class, and then we have the servants, and then we have the serfs. And I find this so interesting because that's all visual. We don't have to get a whole bunch of dialogue telling us, well, those people aren't going to be these people. But we see that there are certain, like even the people that are going to die soon, they know they're going to die soon because it's important to them to die in battle. Then what we see is what they get afforded that the common people don't. And it's interesting. We get a lot of stuff in that movie, in that first act, just from watching what people have and what they don't.
Yeah, a lot of people are praising it really hard for the visual storytelling and that it's giving the audience credit, and I agree with that. I mean, that's one of the best things about the movie. I really kind of imagined it like a comic book. I felt like it would be really easy to take this and put it in panels and have almost no lines through the entire thing. It's using movies. It's using the movie form as a visual medium before it's any other kind of medium, and so we don't need expository dialogue. There's almost no people telling us anything. We can get and I mean, like, when you have a thing that's this simple, you might say, "Oh, well, that's really easy. That you don't really need any of that, and so we shouldn't praise it for that." But how many movies have you seen that have really simple stories that try to make you think that they're way more complicated than they are
by shoving dialogue?
By just shoving dialogue at you and having people explain crap for the audience that's too stupid to understand. Because if you go to a movie theater and you shell out money for tickets and popcorn, you must be a moron, and we need things constantly told to you. No. It's a ride. It knows it's a ride, and then all the interesting symbolism, that's in the visuals, and even just people doing stuff tells us everything we need to know about both what it's about and what's happening.
I will say that there's a possibility that I missed something about Max that I would have made him feel deeper for me. I do feel like we get a little bit of implied backstory, not necessarily out and out, but implied backstory for Furiosa's character, which
definitely.
And by the time
we get a little bit, we even get a little bit of just straight up backstory for her. But yeah,
so that's the whole Holy Land thing that we get to, and I'm like, you know what, that's fair. That's stuff that we wouldn't have been able to just kind of glean without dialogue. But then there are things like the stuff that happens in between her story and now that doesn't get told. I feel like is sort of kind of implied by her station in life, and you can kind of figure out, you can deduce from what you know what she had to do to get to where she is. So it's interesting. I liked Furiosa's character backstory that I had to fabricate in my mind. I'm okay with that. And as you said, they're giving him credit,
Well, when you say that you had to fabricate, I don't think you're having to leap at all. I think it's there. It's just kind of subtle.
It might not be exactly what they intended, but it is a way that it is a logical deduction.
And I don't feel like I need to know I don't feel like I have to make my brain work that much to know enough to appreciate that character.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm feeling it definitely. One thing I definitely want to mention before we go, Vince, is we should just talk a little bit about Tom Hardy and the choice there. I thought it was kind of an odd choice. Initially, I enjoyed it. He's just such a physical actor. I think that's a lot of the reason that he was chosen for this. I also could not help but think the whole way through that first act, especially, that Tom Hardy was picked because of Dark Knight Rises. The folks making this movie knew that he was an actor who would not mind having crap bolted to his face. That's because not really bolted, but you know what I mean. Because
like not bolted through a skull, but bolted behind. Bolted skull.
He wears an incredibly uncomfortable looking apparatus on his face for a good long time and through really complex action scenes.
Yeah, and I would say as a result of that thing on his head and the car it's attached to, there's no way he could have survived that.
Yeah, but
I'm saying.
But it's a really heightened universe. It's really high concept. That's okay.
It's a lot of fun.
I think, but I also think that it's consistent enough about the ways in which people are able to do things that they can't in the real world that it's okay. It's not like nobody dies in this movie. You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah, but the people who die can die from stuff that people would die from.
Well, no, that's true, but still mostly in extreme ways, right? Like,
well, yeah. I mean, granted, because it's all super fast and
okay. My question is, do you think that it's not consistent about that? That it's like
I do.
Here, okay.
See, I think it's not consistent in relation to Max.
It didn't leap out to me as that way, but maybe on a second viewing, with that in mind, I might think that. I don't know.
I think there's a lot of people who have lots of weapons who are very good at killing things, and and the ones that kill themselves, fine, I get it. But the ones
gets lucky a few times. You're right about that.
Oh, he's like ridiculously lucky on a couple occasions, I would say. But you know what? That doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. It was a lot of fun to watch either way. I'm just saying, holy crap, it's amazing that person survived that. To a certain extent, I would say, you know what? Never mind. I'm going to let that thought go. That'll start an argument.
That's cool. This is certainly one of those things. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought. I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed it.
Me too.
I didn't even really throw out any negatives. I should just say this really quick about Max and Tom Hardy. He got a little lost for me in the shuffle for me.
Yeah.
That was really the only big thing, is that if you didn't show me the title, I would not have guessed who the main guy was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's kind of an ensemble cast movie. It's just sort of odd that it's a thing called Mad Max, and I feel like he gets a little bit lost in the shuffle. I still feel like I know kind of enough about him. I just don't know.
I almost wish they would have called it Road Warrior, because that's what the good Mad Max movie was called. It wasn't called Mad Max Road Warrior. It was just called Road Warrior.
Yeah, or just call it Fury Road. It doesn't even have Mad Max in the title.
Fury
man.
Road.
Just call
there
it Fury
go.
Road. Yeah. You don't have to even use an old title, because Fury Road sounds like a thing that they would have called that. But I don't know. Like it feels like it's consistent with the time that it was really originally in. I had a hard time classifying it. And like I'm glad I saw this.
It's an action movie.
Thank you, Vince. I'm glad that I saw this, because it enlightened me a lot about some other movies that I've seen. Because even though this was the new one, in a lot of the stylistic stuff and the tone of it, that I can only assume was what the others looked like in a lot of places, I found myself going, oh, here's a movie I've seen that was influenced by Mad Max. Here's a movie I've seen that was influenced. Like, I kept thinking of things, and I feel like this franchise is kind of in its own in its own class, in its own category. You can't completely 100% classify it, because a lot of the things that we keep calling it are genres that existed post it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that Grindhouse existed before Mad Max.
I don't know if they called it Grindhouse, but
that's what I'm saying.
Grindhouse has been back all the way into the '60s. And,
oh, okay. I see. I didn't think it was called that back then, but I don't know anything about Grindhouse.
I don't know if it's called Grindhouse or not.
Anyway,
but that's what they call Grindhouse now.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is funny to me, because I see the Grindhouse movies, and that's what we define as Grindhouse now. And then you go back and you look at the original Grindhouse stuff, and you go, the spirit's there, but it's a very different thing nowadays.
Well, it's like anytime anybody tries to make a noir.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the same kind of thing. There's a lot of that. Even I don't know. Even like when we do throwback blaxploitation stuff, like that's kind of different from what it was.
It's one of my biggest, most fun things to rant about, is that certain things are time locked. You cannot do another noir movie. You can do neo noir, but you cannot do noir.
Yeah, you could do you could do a hard-boiled movie starring the lead character from The Matrix. That would be neo-noir. Anyway, well, everybody, thanks as always for watching. We sure appreciate it. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince, reminding you to go see movies!
See you later.